They don't storm into your life like a villain in a movie. They don't come with red flags waving or alarm bells ringing. They come with warmth, with politeness, with a perfectly crafted smile that disarms your instincts. That's the problem. The most dangerous people know they can't control you with fear. So they choose something far more effective. They control you with kindness. They've studied what makes people feel safe, what lowers defenses, what builds trust instantly. And they use it like a scalpel, not to heal, but to dissect, to open you up slowly, carefully, until your vulnerabilities are exposed and they can make themselves indispensable. This is not about random acts of generosity. This is about a pattern, calculated, intentional, repeated. The nice person who always seems to know exactly what you need before you ask. The one who always agrees, never argues, and makes you feel like you've finally found someone who gets you. But slowly, so slowly you barely notice, your decisions become theirs. Your moods start revolving around their approval. And when they take a step back, when they go cold or distant, it doesn't feel like a coincidence. It feels like punishment. We've been conditioned to associate niceness with goodness. But real kindness is effortless. It doesn't demand anything in return. Manipulative niceness, on the other hand, always has a motive. It's a currency, a mask, a trap. And the more polished the mask, the more experienced the manipulator. They know how to smile just enough, how to laugh softly, how to mimic empathy like a mirror, because if they can reflect your emotions back at you, they earn your trust. And once trust is in place, they can take anything, your time, your loyalty, your identity, and they'll never raise their voice while doing it. In fact, when you finally confront them, when you sense something's wrong, they'll act shocked, hurt, offended that you could accuse them of anything. And suddenly, you're the villain, because how could someone so nice ever do something so dark? This is where the mask becomes the weapon. When you try to break free, they use your perception against you. They point to all the times they helped you, all the sacrifices they made. They wrap their control in guilt, in obligation, in after everything I've done for you. And now you're not just doubting them, you're doubting yourself. That's how deep the trap goes. You start wondering if you're the problem, if you're overreacting, if maybe they're right. And by the time you realize you've been manipulated, it's not just your time they've stolen, it's your ability to trust your own instincts. That's what makes them dangerous. Not their actions, but how they make you question reality itself. The manipulation doesn't start with lies or aggression. It starts with empathy, or at least something that looks like empathy. They listen, they comfort, they nod in all the right places. And for a moment, it feels real. You think you've found someone who truly sees you, but they're not connecting with your soul, they're gathering data. Every word you share is a thread they can later pull. Every trauma you expose becomes a map of your psyche. They'll remember the exact phrases you use when you're insecure. They'll study your facial expressions when you're hurt. And later, when they need to influence you, they'll feed those exact vulnerabilities back to you in gentle, seemingly caring ways. You won't notice the manipulation because it doesn't feel like pressure. It feels like comfort. And comfort is addictive. This kind of psychological manipulation is insidious because it doesn't trigger the alarm system in your brain. It doesn't activate the fight or flight response. It activates attachment. It builds dependence. And once you're dependent on their approval, their validation, their kindness, they've won. Because now, they can shape your behavior without ever appearing cruel. If you pull away, they'll say they're hurt. If you confront them, they'll cry. If you try to set boundaries, they'll twist it into abandonment. They'll never attack you directly. They'll simply make you feel like a bad person for standing up for yourself. And when they sense you're slipping away, they'll double down on their charm. They'll be even nicer. And the cycle begins again. This is why it's so hard to escape these people. Because they don't chain you down. They make you want to stay. And even after they've taken everything, your time, your energy, your sense of self, you'll still defend them. Because they were never mean. They were never cruel. They were just being nice. That's how the most dangerous people operate, not with force, but with carefully calculated affection, with selective kindness, with psychological hooks disguised as helping hands. And unless you recognize the mask for what it truly is, a shield for something far more sinister, you'll keep mistaking predators for protectors. and they'll keep smiling, knowing you'll never see it coming. There's a particular kind of person who can ruin your life without ever raising their voice. They don't need to, because their power doesn't come from aggression, it comes from subtle control, disguised as charm. These are the covert narcissists. Unlike their loud, attention-seeking counterparts, they hide in plain sight. They don't boast. They don't brag. They don't need to dominate a room, they dominate individuals. Quietly, slowly, intimately. They come across as humble, kind, even selfless. They often play the victim. They'll tell you stories of how others mistreated them, how they were always the one who gave too much, cared too deeply, loved too hard. And without realizing it, you start feeling sorry for them. You want to be different. You want to prove that not everyone will hurt them, that you can love them right. That's the trap, because the more you try to prove your loyalty, the more they tighten their grip. Their tactics are almost invisible. They never scream to get their way. They gently push, they gently guilt, they gently withhold. You start adjusting yourself just slightly to avoid disappointing them. You stop sharing certain opinions. You avoid certain topics. You downplay your own needs because theirs always seem more urgent. And the more you shrink yourself to accommodate them, the more they reward you with affection, with validation, with that warm feeling of being needed. It's addictive. You don't see the pattern at first. You just think you've found someone sensitive, someone who's been hurt and finally feels safe with you. But you're not building a partnership. You're being trained. They create a reality where your value is measured by how well you serve them, where your worth is tied to how much you sacrifice, where love becomes performance, and the moment you step out of line, the performance ends. Covert narcissists are masters at making you feel like you're always on the edge of doing something wrong. They rarely say it outright. They don't need to. A sigh, a look, a slight change in tone, that's all it takes to send you spiraling into guilt, questioning what you did, how you could fix it, how to win back their approval. They don't punish you directly, they make you punish yourself. You begin to monitor your own behavior constantly. You second-guess your thoughts. You apologize for things you didn't even do. And through it all, they maintain their image, calm, reasonable, caring. To outsiders, they're the ideal partner, friend, co-worker. But behind closed doors, they're emotionally starving you, one manipulated moment at a time. What makes this so dangerous is that when you try to speak up, when you finally begin to feel something is off, they'll gaslight you into silence. They'll say you're being too sensitive. They'll insist they never said what you're accusing them of. They'll act confused, even hurt, that you could doubt their intentions. And because they've been so nice, because you can't point to a specific cruel moment, you start to believe them. You begin to question your own perception. That's when the real damage begins, not just to your emotions, but to your identity. You no longer trust yourself. And without that internal compass, they can lead you anywhere. So how do you spot these people before they destroy your sense of reality? You don't look for overt aggression. You look for inconsistencies. You look for how you feel after interactions with them, not just what they say. Do you feel smaller, less sure of yourself, even when the conversation was polite? Do they often play the victim but never take responsibility? Do they subtly make everything about them, even your pain? And most importantly, do you find yourself working harder and harder just to maintain their affection? That's the paradox of dangerous niceness. It never feels dangerous at first. It feels gentle. It feels warm. But underneath that warmth is a system, a psychological maze designed to trap you in roles you didn't agree to. If someone is always kind, but you constantly feel like you're walking on eggshells, something is wrong. If they make you doubt your boundaries, question your feelings, or feel guilty for asserting yourself, that's not love. That's control. And it's one of the most sophisticated forms of manipulation in existence. The real danger is that society protects these people because they're charming, because they're polite, because they seem so nice. When you try to warn others, you'll often be met with disbelief. But they're so kind. They've always been great to me. That's exactly how they keep operating under the radar, behind the mask. And the longer you stay entangled with them, the more your mind bends to fit their version of reality. You start rewriting your story to make them look better. You start blaming yourself for your own pain. That's what covert narcissists do best. They don't break you. They erode you. Once you recognize the pattern, the first instinct is often denial. You'll tell yourself it can't be true. You'll look for excuses. You'll replay all the nice things they've done. But here's the truth. Real kindness isn't confusing. Real empathy doesn't drain you. Real love doesn't require you to disappear in order to keep the peace. If someone's presence in your life feels like a fog where nothing is ever clear and you're always just a little off balance, trust that feeling. That's your mind telling you something is wrong, even if the mask says everything's fine. Dangerous people don't always scream. Sometimes they whisper. Sometimes they smile. Sometimes they wrap their manipulation in velvet and call it love. And if you don't learn to see beyond the surface, you'll never know who's pulling the strings until you realize you're no longer in control of your own life. And by then, it might already be too late.